all over the world on ancient megalithic structures, there's a curious feature that many people completely seem to overlook: tiny stone nubs. They're subtle and they're almost easy to ignore. But when you start looking at them, you realise they appear everywhere, from Japan to Egypt to India to Peru to Greece to Micronesia, China, Bulgaria, and I think I may have even found some at Stonehenge. Why would so many cultures leave behind something that was so small but such an unusual feature? And what purpose could these stone nubs have possibly served? Were they practical? Were they symbolic? Or something we still just don't understand? So today we're going to explore the mystery, and I'll share some of my own ideas along the way. Let's begin by taking a closer look at where some of these stone nubs appear. In Japan, you can find them on ancient temple stones. In Egypt, they're visible on megaliths that date back thousands of years. Even Stonehenge, the most famous site in the world, has what I believe are subtle examples. At first glance, they might seem like random bumps, but their repetition and careful placement suggests intention. They're not accidents, and it raises a lot of questions. And if they were simply decorative, why would so many different cultures use them in almost identical ways? If they were purely practical, why do we sometimes find them in seemingly random locations on massive stones? And the mystery, it deepens the more you look. One of the most common explanations is that they were used to lift massive stones, almost like bosses. And the simple idea is this: a rope loops around the knob, and a team of people hoists the stone into place. And at first this seems plausible, but when you examine the evidence, this theory kind of starts to fall apart. Let's take a look at the Yangshan quarry, for example. The stone nobs here are on a slope upwards, and that makes them terrible lifting points. And some knobs are tiny and shallow, clearly not capable of supporting the massive weight of the stones they're attached to. And so many are positioned at the bottom of the stones, which would mean you would require to flip the stones upside down, which is almost impossible for such a large rock, some of them thousands of tons. And think about the logistics. How many people would it take just to lift one of these stones? And how strong would the ropes need to be? How much space would you need to actually position the workers around the stone? So the more you analyse it, the more unrealistic the lifting theory becomes. It just doesn't add up. And even if we were to ignore the physical impossibility, there's another problem. If the knobs were purely practical, you'd expect to see them only where lifting was necessary, usually at the top of stones. Yet we find them in all sorts of unexpected places. So to me, the pattern is inconsistent with the lifting theory. And it's not just this. In some places we find the higher the stone, the lack of knobs. But then when we look at the bottom of some of the structures, you find the knobs there. So if the lifting theory, if it isn't this, if that theory fails, could they have been symbolic? Some researchers claim that they could represent star constellations, almost like a cosmic map that's been etched into stone. While this is fascinating, this doesn't quite hold up everywhere. In certain places possibly, but overall, no. And again, we'll go back to the Yangshan quarry. The placement of the knobs doesn't represent any known constellations. Others think. Now, I wanted to point out this is something that I thought for quite a long time, and I still think it may hold some truth to it. But some people believe that they are a type of universal language that only the megalithic builders themselves understood. A set of markers or codes whose meaning's been lost over time. And this theory is intriguing because it allows for intentional design without requiring any kind of practical use. And then there's the sound theory. Some stones across the world appear to produce specific notes or even frequencies. In Egypt, certain sandstone blocks resonate when struck.
Something normal sound. No.
Could some of the knobs have been designed to enhance these sonic properties? And could they have allowed the stones to sing? I mean, it's possible, don't get me wrong, but while we can't prove it, the idea adds another layer of mystery. And some people do suggest that they're waste byproducts of stone shaping, but think about all the master builders that would have been constructing these places. Would they really leave behind such a feature that served no purpose at all? And if the stones were cast, why not remove the knobs before the material hardened? They seem intentional. Now, here's one of my own theories, which I admit is a bit speculative. A stretch probably. But could they have been designed to interact with light or shadows or even a magnetic field of some sort? So imagine a solstice rising and it casts a shadow along the stones. For example, we see this in Karahan Tepe. A light shines through a very, very, very small specific point and lights up the faces that have been carved into the stone. So now imagine these stones casting light next to a specific knob. Or could they have cast shadows to points of energy, magnetic alignments, or even healing springs? So when we study Göbekli Tepe, we see that it appears to have been built on a magnetic field. And Stonehenge and other sacred sites appear to have been built on sacred springs. Water, sound, and energy all seem to have played a role in ancient construction. So perhaps the knobs, they weren't navigational markers in a literal sense, but more like point of references for observing celestial events, tracking energy, or even conducting rituals. Another observation is that the size of the knobs appear to correlate with the size of the stone. So larger stones, like in the Yangshan quarry, tend to have larger knobs, and then the smaller ones, like what we see in Peru, tend to have smaller ones. And this is where I go back to my Stonehenge theory. What I think I've seen at Stonehenge, again, I know that Stonehenge was a reconstruction and some of the megaliths could have been put around the wrong way, but again, I do believe that I found a stone nub, albeit a massive one, which in theory would make sense, but in comparison to the Yangshan quarry size, so like the size of the stone compared to the knob, it's a bit of a stretch again, but it could possibly be that I have found a nub at Stonehenge. Thing is though, could they have been used as measurement markers, helping builders plan and line massive projects with precision? I mean, it's possible. And even if this is quite mundane, it's still a brilliant demonstration of ancient engineering skill, something that they are not supposed to have possessed. So what do you make of these stone knobs? They could simply be practical, or they could encode a lost symbolic language. They could enhance sound, possibly. They could mark solstices or track energy fields, or maybe they were all of these things. But the truth is, we don't know for sure. But one thing is clear, these features are far more important than what they're given credit for. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. These are just some of my theories, and then I thought I'd give you what I think my overall theory could be at the end. But anyway, don't forget to comment, like, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching.